On the evening of November 24, 1971, a man in a dark suit and sunglasses walked up to the counter at Portland International Airport and bought a one-way ticket. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. He was calm. Unremarkable. The kind of man nobody would look at twice. He boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short hop to Seattle, took seat 18C, lit a cigarette, and ordered a bourbon and soda. Within a few hours, he would vanish into American folklore, and to this day, nobody knows who he really was. The flight took off a little after 3 p.m. It wasn't full, maybe 36 passengers scattered through the cabin. Not long after takeoff, Cooper passed a note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a phone number, the kind of thing a lonely businessman might slip a stewardess, and she dropped it into her purse without reading it. Cooper leaned over and quietly told her, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." She opened it. The note was typed, and it said he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit next to him. She did. He opened the briefcase just enough for her to see red cylinders wired together, along with a large battery and a tangle of wires. Then he calmly stated his demands: $200,000 in used $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready in Seattle to refuel the plane on arrival. The pilot radioed the demands to the ground. Northwest Orient's president made a decision almost immediately: pay it. Keep everyone calm, keep everyone alive, and figure out the rest later. While the plane circled Seattle for nearly 2 hours, burning time so authorities could scramble to gather the cash and the chutes, Cooper sat quietly in his seat, sipping his drink, chain-smoking, polite the entire time. Passengers had no idea anything was wrong. As far as they knew, they were just circling due to a minor mechanical issue. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, Cooper allowed the passengers and 2 of the flight attendants to leave in exchange for the money and parachutes, which were delivered directly to the aircraft. He kept the cockpit crew and 1 flight attendant on board. Then he gave his final set of instructions: refuel the plane, and fly to Mexico City, at a low altitude, under 10,000 feet, with the landing gear down and the wing flaps set at a specific angle. It was a flight profile that made no sense for comfort or speed. It only made sense for one thing: jumping out. The plane took off again just after 7:30 p.m. now with only 5 people aboard, 3 crew in the cockpit, 1 flight attendant, and Cooper. He ordered everyone into the cockpit and shut the door. Somewhere over the dark, forested wilderness of southwestern Washington, near the Oregon border, the crew felt a sudden pressure change in the cabin. A warning light blinked on, indicating that the aft stairway, the built-in staircase at the back of the Boeing 727, had been opened mid-flight. Nobody saw him go. There was no cry, no gunshot, no struggle. Just a change in air pressure, and then, nothing. When the plane landed in Reno for a final inspection, Cooper was gone. So was the money. So was one of the 4 parachutes. He had strapped on a chute, stepped out into the freezing night air at roughly 10,000 feet, into a storm, over some of the most rugged and remote timberland in the Pacific Northwest, and disappeared completely. What followed was one of the largest manhunts in FBI history. Hundreds of agents, military personnel, and local volunteers combed the forests of southwest Washington for weeks. Helicopters swept the treetops. Ground teams searched ravines and riverbanks. They found nothing. No parachute. No briefcase. No body. No Cooper. For years, the FBI chased hundreds of suspects, checked out thousands of tips, and interviewed anyone who even loosely matched the profile: calm, mid-40s, familiar enough with aircraft to specify a very particular flight configuration. None of them panned out. The case, officially titled Norjack, sat open for decades. Then, in 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the Columbia River during a family camping trip, and he uncovered a decaying bundle of cash. When the FBI checked the serial numbers, they matched bills from Cooper's ransom money almost exactly, nearly $6,000 worth, badly deteriorated, buried just beneath the riverbank. It was the single hardest piece of physical evidence ever recovered in the case. But instead of solving the mystery, it deepened it. How did the money end up there? Did Cooper survive the jump and bury it himself? Did the money wash down the river separately after he died somewhere in the wilderness? Nobody could say for certain. Over the decades, theories multiplied. Some believed Cooper never survived the jump at all, that he leapt into freezing rain, into heavily forested mountains, wearing a suit and loafers, with a parachute rig he may not have fully understood how to use, and that his remains simply were never found in that dense, unforgiving terrain. Others believed he was a former paratrooper, someone with real jump experience, who planned the whole operation meticulously and walked away into a new identity. A long list of named suspects emerged over the years. Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam veteran who committed an almost identical hijacking months later, though he was ruled out by handwriting analysis and other details. Kenneth Christensen, a former paratrooper and Northwest Orient employee, championed by his family after his death as a likely match. Robert Rackstraw, a decorated and controversial former military pilot investigated heavily by journalists and later the subject of documentaries, though the FBI never charged him and he denied it until his death in 2019. None of them were ever definitively confirmed. Each theory has its believers, and each has holes big enough to fly a 727 through. In July 2016, the FBI formally suspended active investigation into the case, redirecting its resources toward more prioritized investigative efforts, though the case technically remains open in the sense that new, verifiable physical evidence could reopen it. To this day, D.B. Cooper, a name that was actually a media error, a wire service reporter misheard or misreported the alias as DB instead of Dan, remains the only unsolved hijacking case in American commercial aviation history. What makes the case endure isn't just the mystery of who he was. It's the audacity of what he did. He hijacked a commercial airliner with what may have been a fake bomb built from road flares and wire, extracted a fortune from a major airline without firing a single shot, and then stepped out of a moving aircraft into a black, freezing sky, betting his life on a parachute and a plan, and simply vanished from history. No confirmed sighting. No credible deathbed confession that ever fully checked out. No body. Somewhere in the forests of southwest Washington, or perhaps nowhere at all anymore, the truth about the man calling himself Dan Cooper is still out there. And more than 50 years later, nobody has ever proven otherwise.